All right. A Jhudora backstory. So basically, about 2 months ago, I tried to start a reimagining of Jhudora. I didn't quite like how it went, so I unlisted the video. And then we just had Jhudora Day a few days ago, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll write a second part to the first part, and then see if I have any more, oomph to it. So, long story short, I'm just using clipchamp and I'm just using the there's a text to speech, so I'm just writing dialogue. So it's kind of more like an audiobook, so like please forgive me. Uh I use a lot of photos in the first one, but I think I'll just make it more just one picture per chapter. That way you can kind of have your own version or imagination of what's going on. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, who knows. So, enjoy.
Alarain. The battle report from last night is completed.
Spare me, please, another day, another report. I wish I wasn't here on Fortella. Oh, great, a cup of moon rock tea. I might as well let my faerie piss in the cup next time. When is the next resource drop? I am starting to think that they.
Telemir cut her off.
Now isn't the time. We need a plan, and we need it now.
Alarain, as mundane and as annoyed as ever, reached over and flipped open the report. She blinked 5 times in the hopes it would change what she saw or that she would awake from a dream. 3 enchanted light seals. Telemir shook her head. Light seals being a form of magical barrier used to protect documents or send hidden messages. Once sealed, in order to reopen it, you would need one of the original sealer's exact soul light to open it. The military used it this way for 2 levels of protection. Ordinary faeries, usually prone to secrets of less importance, usually hid them in plain sight. Where a document would completely change with the exact soul light, a simple counter spell could be used to make the document be rendered useless if a wrong soul light was shined on it. However, there were many magical ways to get around most seals, as all seals were not made equal and most naturally weakened over time.
3 seals, plus me and now you. That makes 5 of us now.
Alarain threw her hands up in the air as a form of protest and looked around the room before looking skyward.
Well, that's 4 too many to keep a secret.
She drank down her moonrock tea and held the empty cup as she began to read. Telemir, lost in thought, didn't notice the obvious gesture. Alarain barked at her.
Well, it's going to take more than a cup of moon rock to get me through this.
Telemir took the hint and went off. Alarain kept reading, and as usual, the more annoyed, the more she murmured out loud while rubbing her eyes. A habit she still blamed her father for.
Father was right. Look at you, so smart, and trying to do something so stupid. Go ahead and see what's out there, it's not a whole lot. Thanks for the great insight, Dad. No longer could I bear living under your shadow. Dark faeries, 7 dead, no known enemy survivors. No casualties sustained.
Telemir returned to the room.
Well,
what?
Well, what are we going to do with the baby? I assume you figured it out by now. They ran a light test, and yep, a dark faerie.
Fuck, I hate this planet. Any chance they will return, or there is a group that has interested in such a situation like this?
If there was one, they won't anymore. It was believed to be some sort of ritual. One we have no knowledge of. The book we recovered, we cannot make much sense of it. It's not in Dalenish. We don't know what these dark faeries were up to, or who their loyalties lie with and against. Something went terribly wrong out there. 7 dead dark faeries, and we sustained no casualties. The noble families will want her executed. Everyone will fear or shun her. The army will want to use her as a weapon. And who knows who else will be looking for her. You wanted your chance to change the world, well, here it is.
Well, this isn't quite what I was hoping for. No good ideas come to mind. It is going to be impossible to explain how we ended up with a living dark fairy baby. I can already picture my dad laughing when he hears about this. I bet he would know what to do. Or at least where to start.
Well, it is very rare. I don't even know the actual chances for a male fairy to be born. And then survive long enough to take the trials. Even more crazy is having a child, and well, here you are.
While the differences between male and female fairies are vast, the most important difference is that male fairies have 2 natural soul lights while female fairies only have 1. This makes male fairies formidable in battle, which is why they are usually forbidden to take their trials. Most often they find themselves short-lived and are assassinated. The main problem is male fairies are the only fairies capable of stable cleansing of soul light veins, rivers or pools, which all fairies use to regenerate or heal themselves. Thus they are seen as either too powerful, too prone to shift the balances of power, or too difficult to control.
Yeah, well, the days of wanting or trying to be a normal fairy are long gone. Well, we are going to need a plan, and I am going to need something stronger than moonrock tea.
Alarain went out on a hunt for something strong to put in her tea. Meanwhile, Telomere went to the fort library and requested several war reports and annals. Notably, Trisker's Oath, Set's Rebellion, and the Siege of Pelistar Mountain. Telomere found Alarain and dragged her back to the council room. Telomere was both annoyed and surprised Alarain had found Megora crystals, but was not in the mood for more fighting and figured today was a good enough reason to give them a try, despite them being banned.
Well, it is obvious to me now. The only people in a position to protect her and keep her hidden are the army. It's just a matter of how. I am aware of how convenient that is to think or say. But the reality is pretty simple. We need to leverage every possible advantage we can find.
They then spent close to an hour reviewing, reading and arguing about potential fairies or Neopians that could be suitable candidates. As their reading continued, both of them slowly got lost in the dream and fascination of what a dark battle fairy could represent. Eventually, Telomere snapped back into her usual self.
Hey, snap out of it. I know as well as anyone else what this child represents, or could be one day. The last dark fairy to stand with us was Valagath. If only they had held the barrier, we likely would have held the borders of space between Kodotia and Masharim.
We don't need the reminiscing. Why is there a dark fairy baby here? Here of all places? Regardless of whatever the truth is, if we play this right, she will be out of their reach, at least for a while.
Well, a low-ranking battle fairy will not be strong enough or likely inclined to take upon this type of task or mission. This will take at least 15 years. We need to find a powerful fairy. A very powerful fairy. I would rather have a good backstory and a strong fairy than a weak fairy with all the right reasoning and good heart. The second the child becomes aware or lashes out with dark magic or spells, all bets and plans are off. Likely an immediate all-out war.
They spent several more hours, talking, arguing and debating. The effects of the Megara crystals began to show.
These are the candidates. Hahiri, Solari, and Hadrax. Write and send the summons.
Well, we obviously cannot make the summons here. What did you have in mind?
Well, if this plan has any chance of staying secret, and I know you are not going to like this. So, calm down. But, the best option we have is some mirror.
Wonderful, a dream come true. A literal shit rock that goes as a planet. You know there is a chance these 3 won't even show up on Zamir.
Well, the people we need are the ones who would go to a planet like Zamir. Depending on how these meetings go, we likely still need to make several more plans and arrangements. However, the more people involved, the harder a secret is to keep. Maybe less is more.
Well, at some point, Our little situation here is going to grow both literally and figuratively. We will need to be a step ahead of both our allies and enemies.
Yeah, that is great and all, but I think we are getting a little ahead of ourselves here right now. I don't even want to imagine what is going to happen once this situation enters the light of day. A lot of unhappy people. We can probably at the least keep the military happy. They would bitch at us regardless if we petition them for help now or later. We can always say we were worried of double agents or a spy finding out. At this point, we are going to share the fate of this child, so we might as well give it everything now and not cry about it later.
Thanks for the sentimental pep talk there, Alarine, but some of us here don't have a father for a fairy. Look where we are right now, not a great place or position. I know it was the highest post offered to both of us, however, not the place where dreams turn into light falls.
All right, let's get back to the issue at hand. We need to send an encrypted message to Hadrax and find the soul lights for Solari and Hahiri. I mean, it's just the risk we need to take. This is already going to get worse before it gets any better. The less questions, the less people, the less suspicion, the better chance we have of this working. Almost any dark magic artifact can get them to Zamira and it can get them off.
That being said, we could definitely use a miracle or two along the way. Or perhaps about 10. I will send the summons, and we will need to make preparations of our own.
So that is what they did. They spent the remainder of that evening planning, preparing and going over the various battle logs, annals and service records, hoping to find a small bit of information that could give their chances of recruiting these three just a little bit higher. A location on Zamira was chosen. The basic foundations of a plan were laid. Due to their partaking of Gamora crystals, as the time for their shift to end drew near, Telomere's anxiety rose greatly, so they went to the small light cavern and bathed in the tiny and only light spring on Fortella to purge their soul light of any residual toxins. For they knew not to use magic while taking Gamora. All faeries knew what happened to those who overused Gamora, and every last fairy knew what type depended on it. 5 standard days later on Zamira, Alarine sat quietly in a room alone, waiting for the first arrival. Second Commander Hahiri, a fire fairy and current wielder of the battle staff Kokomo. Known by her enemies as the Blazing Witch. By new recruits as the Witch of 7 Candles. Her records did not record her enlistment date, however her earliest recorded battle merit was over 300 years prior. This worried Alarine, but at the same time gave her a great sense of relief, as she assumed either the plan would end here or she would have a high-ranking enough co-conspirator to see the plan take shape.
Well, it's too late now for second thoughts or having cold feet.
As the doorknob began to turn, she realized she had not even bothered to think about a backup plan if things went poorly. The gravity of the situation began to weigh heavier on her. The door swung open abruptly. Before taking a step, the fairy scanned the various areas of the room she could see. She closed the door behind her. Alarine waited patiently, as she slowly paced herself to the only other visible chair in the room.
The strange keeps on getting stranger. I expected, well, a little more of a welcome or presence.
She made a guttural noise in her throat, and her face frowned greatly.
It's one thing to see this many Grendos in one place, but to smell this many is another thing. This better be worth my time.
I apologize for the smell. I had not known it would be this, in your mouth. The seriousness of this situation is proportionate for a summons here.
I have no desire to overstay my welcome here. Speak.
It is not my intention to play games or make light of the situation. It's simply that it's all or nothing for me at this point and anyone else who would join. Vague, yes, I know. Best worst case scenario, the end of my career. Worst case, well, I would rather not think about that.
Perhaps you could give me a hint or two, and I will interrupt you if the situation wanders away from my interests.
Let me get straight to the point. You were chosen for many reasons, but the two most important are your rank and your ability to get an item that will be needed in the future. It is not that this item would be overly challenging to obtain. Getting access to where it is located is. The most difficult part would be getting it to where it would be used. Not many people care about this item, but asking questions about it would only draw unwanted attention from very powerful people, mostly enemies. Stop me at any point, but I believe you have seen this item.
Alarain looked at Hahiri, and as she looked at her she saw she was deep in thought, and stopped talking.
Given your youth and lack of knowledge of Zamir, there could only be so many rare items I have seen that you would have knowledge of. Which makes this either a very old item or a very destructive one. I have served a long time, but there are just so few items I have seen that I can imagine you're being in need of.
Well, that's the thing. I am not the one who would need it.
I am pretty certain over time I would be able to guess the item. That being said, what's in it for me? Why should I get involved?
There are likely many reasons. You have served long enough to have seen many wars come and go. You have seen firsthand if the sacrifices were worth it. I am not saying it would be this simple or guaranteed, but if your part all went to plan, it would lay the foundation to entering not just neutral or contested space but Dreska zones and potentially farther. There are likely more personal reasons as well, but that is what is at stake.
If that is what is at stake, then why is there any reason to be secretive or covert about it?
For me personally, I just don't trust people will do the right thing, or at least what I think is right. The type of opportunity here likely changes the scales of power and influence greatly across the galaxy, and some people would rather not have that come to pass. I wish there was a simpler way.
My part doesn't seem overly complicated or complex. Is there anything obvious you are leaving out?
Probably. You are likely one of the last pieces of the puzzle for this plan to work. Without this object, there really is very little point to this whole endeavor. The best part for you, is that you have time to see if the other parts go to plan, which means you can either help in some form or if it goes wrong act as if you were never here. To be honest, this is mainly a win-win for you. I believe if I told you outright you would agree.
Well, I make no promises yet. I am guessing you will not tell me what it is without me first agreeing.
Correct. That is the nature of having little to gain and everything to lose. Time is also a problem, so you will need to make a decision before you leave this room.
Let me ask one question, obviously a very revealing question, and I will decide after that.
Okay, you can ask a question, but it has to be a yes or no question.
Hahiri got up from her chair and paced around the room for a while. She looked at Alarain for a moment, and looked as if she was about to speak, and then began to pace some more.
I should have asked for more questions. I have 3, but I will choose one. Okay, this item. If you had enough time, training, or the right conditions, could anyone in theory use this item?
While I don't know a whole lot about this item, according to everything I know about it, the answer is no. It is a can or can't sort of deal.
Well, that was the answer I was hoping to hear. Most unique objects I have seen operate that way, but knowing it is personal in nature, I have a suspicion I know the item. I am just trying to figure out why you want this item. That means there is both good news and bad news. Either you are going to die here, or I will join you.
Her demeanor quickly shifted and she activated her Trellian armor. The bright red melted away her outer disguise. Alarain was not in a position to either run or fight, and as she stared at the bright red she smiled.
Well, if you had any real intention of killing me at this point you wouldn't have stopped at red. I have no intention of running, so what is it?
I stopped at red to protect myself in case this is a trap and show I am serious.
I am guessing you expect me to reveal everything, but that just isn't the case. That was kinda the point of Zamir. A few things. If you intend to kill me, you will need to get far more serious. Secondly, if you do, the amount of heat generated here will start melting this building, which just happens to be in the weapons district. They just don't like fires around here. At that point, the best case scenario is you luckily escaping here with no information. On top of that, you will likely have been seen by enough people to receive an official summons. I told you before. I didn't come here to play games.
They sat there staring at each other for several very long seconds, each contemplating the other's next move. But as the seconds went on, the tension faded.
Well, as it turns out, you are not a complete fool. Hopefully just a desperate one. My guess is that you are looking for a battle staff.
The one you last saw about 160 years ago. It hasn't been used since.
160 years ago. I saw many battle staffs in that war. A staff. A staff you want me to basically steal. Well, I am going to assume it's a staff from our side, otherwise there would be no real way to get it. Battle staffs just don't go missing. They are usually the property of great houses and thus inherited or in rare cases given to those capable of wielding such power. You said it wasn't about getting it, it was about getting there. Wait, if it hasn't been you since. Oh no. You mean Yasforth?
Hahiri's mind began to race nervously. For everyone knew only a dark fairy could wield Yasforth, named after an ancient bird, apparently for the sound it made when caged. More importantly, it was the only known dark fairy battle staff in their side of the universe. Yes, they had many wands, rods, and scepters imbued with dark fairy-imbued energy crystals, but without dark fairies, Moradanian crystals, and a shrine, you could just not create any more dark fairy battle staffs. Her racing thoughts slowly moved towards dread and fear, and for a brief moment she lost all ability to think.
Well, there needs to be a dark fairy to wield Yasforth, so who is it?
That's the thing. This fairy doesn't have a name yet.
Why would I risk all this if there isn't even a fairy to wield it?
You misunderstand. She doesn't have a name. Yet.
So wait, there's a dark fairy baby or child. That's not good. Actually, this is a borderline disaster.
Your part to play in this doesn't involve you getting all the answers to your questions. So what's it going to be?
Strange. So very strange. Either you know something you should not, this is just a lucky coincidence, or the hand of the eternal illumination is guiding us. Did you know I fought directly alongside Valagath?
So you knew the traitor? She threw it all away, and for what? To die on a barren rock void of any real benefit or purpose. Looks like I am not the first fool you've met.
Hahiri's demeanor shifted again, and a very serious look came across her face. She paused for a moment, and let out a sigh.
I had not given much thought how you younger faeries viewed Valagath. It's not the time or place anyways. Obviously you would have no way of understanding the complexities of what you are asking me to do. Yes, it's just a staff, and an immensely powerful one at that, but lines will be drawn and color will be spilt. No point worrying about it right now though, I suppose. If everything goes well, or well enough for her to actually be capable of using the staff, then yes, I will retrieve Yasforth. However, I will do it my way or in whatever way I deem necessary. If that's not good enough, you will need to find someone else. Either way, I would be in support of this cause. You were right, many of these reasons are more personal than taking back various star systems or individual planets.
Good enough for me. Take this soul light and I will contact you if need be, but I wouldn't expect that to happen anytime soon. If you have any simple questions, now is a good time.
How much time would I have? How old is this dark fairy?
Still a baby, you will have plenty of time.
I was hoping for sooner rather than later. However, a fairy that young likely would not have been imbued with soul light, and naturally it will not be a dark fairy soul shade. This will be quite the interesting fairy. I am going to need some time to think this through. Well, may the eternal illumination guide and protect us.
Hahiri got up and took the soul light. She inspected it briefly before dropping it into one of her shoes. She got up and walked towards the door. She paused for a moment and looked back to Alarain.
The history you have been told about that war is likely a lie. If you find yourself in the wrong company on the wrong side, you will be in need of a blue coin with a black crown on both sides. If you find yourself in the right company on the right side, I suggest you learn how to sing a little song called The Sleeping Star.
She turned away and left. A little while later Telomere came back to the room as she was guarding it. Alarain filled her in. As she retold her everything she remembered, the more she said the more it dawned on her the plan was actually working. The more this dawned on her, the heavier she felt. She brushed this strange sensation aside as she knew she had more work to do. A lot more. Telomere as usual gave Alarain plenty of encouragement, and much needed comic relief. However, underneath it all they both knew the clock was still ticking. If all went to plan, next would be Hadrax, a marble Grawl.